Adam Pearce here from Blend Commerce. Welcome to a new vlog where we are talking about all things e-commerce, agencies and Shopify. So as I said, I am the CEO and co-founder of Blend. I've been doing this now for about 5 years and I'm joined by my colleague Kelly. So Kel, your chance.
Cool. So I'm Kelly, I'm the operations director at Blend and I'm very nervous for what we're going to talk about today. Okay, well, we'll see how it goes.
Guy.
Yeah.
So I think today we want to talk a little bit about kind of like using agencies versus going in-house. And the reason I wanted to bring you into this is because obviously from your point of view, you had a Shopify brand, you did a lot of things in-house and you kind of used a little bit of agency. So I suppose we've got very different experiences of kind of what you do. So maybe tell us a bit about your business and kind of, you know, how it went and what you did.
Yeah, sure. So I had a Shopify business. I think it was very sort of small fry compared to the merchants that we are working with at Blend. And obviously with that, it meant that I needed to do a lot of the stuff myself. So everything from planning and marketing to admin and packing orders and sending things out and customer service, every bit of that was my responsibility. So a lot for one person. There were things that were sort of outsourced to contractors. So yeah, it's been interesting to see the flip side of it.
What do you think's been the biggest difference in terms of like your expectation of like what an agency does versus when you're doing it yourself?
I mean, I've obviously known other agencies. This is not sort of my perception of like Blend specifically as an agency, but I've always sort of thought agencies just like messed around most of the time, that they didn't actually, you know, like there didn't seem to be a lot going on. No, it's true. So my perception about agencies just in general were that all these people work for this one company and they're maybe writing a social post for you once a week. Like, why is it costing me so much money? So I was sort of hesitant to use agencies because they were relatively expensive. And I just didn't see the value that I was getting for them. And I'm talking more sort of in a marketing sense rather than from a development perspective.
Yeah.
Because marketing is something that anyone feels like they could probably do themselves. Things have changed though, and I think especially with iOS changes, there's a lot that companies should be outsourcing. There've been a lot of changes and you can't really do it all.
I mean, the thing is, like, I think on the social media front, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because like with your business, you know, with Monkey Bum, it was your business. You knew what you wanted to do the business and you knew what the direction you wanted to go in. So I guess I kind of feel like actually at that stage, you do need to do that social media push yourself.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if you then got to educate someone else in terms of what your brand needs to say and needs to do on social, can an agency really do that?
Yeah, no, you're quite right. Because I was smaller, I didn't have brand guidelines or tone of voice guidelines. I didn't have things that I could hand over to an agency and say, this is what I'm doing. I mean, I could give them like a brief, high level, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm about. But there was just so much more to it and most of it was parked in my brain. So it was very difficult for me to get that out and expect the level that I was outputting for marketing to come from an agency. It just was not possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, you kind of need that foundation in.
Yeah.
I think obviously we don't do social media marketing, but when we do have agencies that do it for brands, they need to be at a certain level of being established.
Absolutely.
To have examples of the kind of, you know, copy, the kind of designs, that kind of thing. Yeah. On the design front, so we talked a little about like the social media side of things there. From a design point of view, what, you know, think about when you had Monkey Bum, what would have been your concerns about using an agency from a design perspective for the site?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest concern would be that there would be different designers doing different things. And I had a kids' clothing brand. So obviously like the brand needed to really follow through in all the garments that we were sort of printing, designing. There really just needed to be that golden thread. And I felt like if I was using an agency, potentially, you know, one designer might output one thing and a different designer might output another thing. And it just could be a bit of a mishmash. So I actually went with a contracted route. So I contracted one designer who did designs for me. And it worked pretty well. I think she also then got to learn what I was specifically looking for as we worked together over a longer period of time.
How do you kind of stop that happening in Blend? from that
So
point of view?
what has been really eye-opening at Blend is how closely the team actually works together. So although we've got multiple designers, we also have a head of design who's signing everything off. We also have account managers who know exactly, what each client is looking for. And there have been instances where something's gone to an account manager and the account manager says, oh, hang on guys, I don't think this is in line with what this client is all about. I've had this conversation with the client, which leads me to think this isn't in line. And then it sort of goes back to the drawing board and we can make sure that we just, making sure that all those holes are plugged, it's in line with the client's, sort of expectations.
I mean, I think, Tashi, that's one of the things that we messed up in the early days at Blend, is that we didn't have that communication within the team.
Yeah.
And I think, that's been the biggest thing, particularly over the past few years that we've done is that when a client comes on, everyone is on the same page and we're having those joint planning meetings because, I think anyone who's kind of dealt with an e-commerce brand or dealt with an agency will know it's such a subjective thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And people are going to interpret things in different ways. But what I like for the stage you've got to now is that when a client comes on, we know, right, the expectation is the client wants to get to this point, right? To help do that, what can all of these people do to get to it?
Yeah.
And I think, like I say, in the early days, that didn't used to happen. And we used to get to that point where the client was like, look, why are we designing this way? So it is super important to do that. I mean, one of the things that I always think about from a development point of view is that, look, there've been a lot of big Shopify stores and a lot of big brands that have kind of hacked their way through Shopify. And what I mean by that is, look, adding apps, picking up stuff off Google and doing the development work. What point do you think it is that you get to as a merchant that you should be going, right, okay, now I need that external help from an agency? Is there like a cut-off point? Is there a revenue level? Like, what, from your experience, when did you know that you would need to go and consult that?
Well, I think there are two parts to this question. For me, I'm not a technical person. So I think something that I've learned being an entrepreneur is do the things that you know you can do well and outsource the rest, because otherwise you're spreading yourself so thin. It's already something that you don't know that you're doing really well. Why would you continue to try when it's not working? So I think if you flip that on its head a little bit, if you are a merchant who has a bit of development experience, sure, hack away, see what you can do. But eventually you're not going to have the time to implement the things that need doing. Development does take time. There are so many apps out there. So even if there's an app solution, how do you know which one is the best one? Do you have the time to go and research them? And that's where our partners probably come in a little bit. We have taken time to look at, well, what works? And, we're not exclusively partnered with various apps. We are always trying to find the best fit for our merchants as well. So I think merchants need to be really considerate about, there's that work-life balance. Are you going to work, 18 hours a day? The whole purpose of having your own business is to have a bit more freedom. And if you're doing it all yourself, you just, you're not going to have that balance. So there definitely needs to be a point where they hand it over to a team and say, right, let's run with this.
It's hard, I suppose, isn't it? Because when you think about that development aspect of it and what you envision your website is going to be like, you are approaching it from kind of how you are interpreting that other people experience it. And I think it is difficult, isn't it? And I think we find with our clients when they come in, some of the suggestions that we make don't seem logical because you're kind of almost blinded to it. And I've had conversations with you about Blend, haven't I, about our own website. I feel like I can't make any recommendations now because I've been looking at this website, I know this business inside out, but in terms of putting it in a way that other people can interpret, it's hard. And the thing you mentioned about apps, I think is a good point, is that, I think the one of the biggest benefits actually with apps when working with an agency is that all agencies now pretty much have that app tech stack, don't they? It's like us with Blend, we've essentially got sort of 10 core apps that we get to work together. And yes, we can bring other ones in, but I feel like that's the benefit of using an agency, if you are concerned about your app stack, is you don't then have to do that due diligence.
And I think part of the additional benefit of agencies is we have those relationship with the app developers. So if something goes wrong as a merchant, you're probably not going to get an answer very quickly, where because we're a development agency, we have like a line to the company and can say, guys, please, we need help with this. Something's not working here.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, it's time, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose you had that, with Monkey Bum. It's like, do you want to be sat in a queue of talking to someone on a chat bar when actually you don't fulfill 20 orders? It's like...
No, I'll be honest. So I actually outsourced my development work to one person. It was sort of, I wouldn't say it was an agency, it was more sort of a company that was doing development and a little bit of marketing, but it was basically a one-man band. And I quite liked that I just dealt with him and he just did everything I needed. In retrospect, there were probably some things that were super simple that he could have said, actually, do you know that you can just do that? And that's what's been quite interesting about working at Blend, is often our developers will say, does the client know they can do this? Here's a video to show them how. So instead of raising things that I was being billed pretty big money for, I could have just been doing that myself. It would have taken me 10 minutes.
Sure.
I suppose I could have Googled as well. Maybe I should have started there.
But I think it's even with that, it is problematic because sometimes when you do that, you find so many responses. Like if you think about the Shopify help pages, there is so much discussion on those, and 4 or 5 people give a different solution. It's that time to go through and try them. I'm probably going to ask you to be a little self-critical now about Blend, about what we do, but I think also with agencies. So thinking about someone like you and Monkey Mum, who was, at that stage where you wanted to start to work with agencies before you sold, being in the agency world now and thinking about you in that position, as that independent business owner, what are the things that agencies still need to do better to help people like you in that position?
That's a very good question. So I think from my sort of perspective at the moment, I can understand why merchants potentially get a little bit frustrated with agencies, in the sense that they're paying a lot of money for a job to be done, and they're only really seeing that job complete at the end of a relatively long period of time. I mean, development doesn't happen overnight. I'm not talking about a feature, I'm talking more sort of like big development. And you know that they're spending a lot of money, and I can see why they would think, oh, well, what have you been doing for, 4 weeks or whatever it is to build an entire site, which is not very much time in any case. And then I sit within Blend and I see, well, wow, like we are working flat out. Our team has been amazing. They are super stacked and everyone's just, trying to crack on, trying to support each other. So it's very interesting seeing both sides of it. I think agencies probably, it's just the way it is. There will always be something that can be improved, and I think that's just the nature of agency life. I've been very impressed with how, as soon as we find something that has maybe not gone as we'd like it to, we've gone in and fixed it. And then the next project will come up and that thing isn't an issue anymore, but there might be something else that's an issue. And I think at Blend, we're really just trying to perfect that delivery. I don't know if we'll get to perfection. I don't know if perfection exists.
No, I don't think we will. I think that's, that's something I think that actually I would like to talk about, in that when you're an independent business owner, you've been doing it yourself, you hit a roadblock and something isn't successful as you want it to be. I think there is that perception that when you go with an agency, everything is going to go 100% right at the time. And reality is, it's never going to happen because, we all know e-commerce, there are so many different variables and things can happen, and yes, there are things you can plan for, but there is always going to be that anomaly or that thing that's going to happen. And, we think about, I don't really want to talk about COVID, but in COVID, that was something, that happened. Okay, for a lot of merchants, it was a positive thing, but it's just stuff that can't be planned for. And I think, particularly with development work, there is always going to be that element of, okay, look, we've got to try this thing. But I think that's what we've got very good at over the past few years, to kind of saying, right, our hypothesis is that it's going to do this thing. It might work, it might not work. The reason I'm suggesting is because we did it these 3 or 4 other places. But of course, it's going to be interesting to do it. And I think that's what I found very interesting with like in the days when we used to do Facebook ads, because we would have merchants say just look right, what is the return on ad spend you're going to guarantee us? Well, how the hell do we know? Like we can suggest what we think it might be, but it's like now with our development work, we're looking at saying right, we want to increase the lifetime value of a store, but we're giving ourselves a longer period and we're tracking against that all the time. And I think that's one thing I always talk about with kind of people that are using an agency for the first time is make sure your expectations are right in the sense that, we ain't Superman. We will do our very best and we'll try things, but it's still going to be, a little bit up and down at times to get to that final point.
You're right, there's so many variables that you can sort of track. Well, this is how we plan to get there, and there'll be something that crops up that no one anticipated, no one expected, and it becomes a new challenge to say, well, we can't go this way, maybe we've got to divert around. So I think the agency's been great for sort of problem solving in that respect as well.
I'm going to ask you another one now that I'd be interested in your take on it, because I know we've spoken this in the past, but when you think about, obviously, when we work with clients, obviously you're very involved with clients sort of day to day and checking and making sure they have a good experience. If if we've got merchants now watching this kind of saying, look, I'm thinking of switching agencies or I'm thinking of using an agency for the first time, what are the attractive traits of a client to someone like you as an ops director? So what are the kind of things you want to be seeing, hearing, behaviours? Because I think ultimately, look, yes, it is a hiring experience when a merchant tries to select an agency, but other agencies owners will tell you as well, we are also evaluating that client because we need to know that we've got the right kind of clients to do. So what are the things that, if you think about our best clients, the ones that you really work well with, what are the things that they do really well that they say their behaviours?
So that's a really, really great question, because we've obviously experienced various types of merchants that we've worked with, and we've seen where things work really well and where things maybe don't work so well. And I think I would have to say that probably one of the things I would be looking for is a level of trust. We are not here to take your money and run. That's not what we're here for. We really do want to help merchants. So when we come up against merchants who have zero level of trust, they've obviously been burned somewhere else. I mean, we can understand that they're not really willing to trust again. But if there's no trust, it just makes it really difficult for us to do our job. So we will come with recommendations and everything will sort of get shut down. It means, well, what can we try then? So, if you're not willing to let us do anything, it makes it really difficult. So I think that would probably be top of my list. I also think that there's like a level of experimentation that merchants should be open to. I'm not saying go and spend all your money, on a new feature, but let's A/B test it. Let's see if this might be, an additional revenue stream. Like maybe there's something missing here. So the ones who are sort of willing to try things tend to be the ones that get the most out of Blend as well. It's not to say we're going to try and, get everyone to try something brand new, but I think Blend is relatively innovative. We've got great partnerships where we get access to beta testing. Take it up. Let's see. There are just so many things that could be done. But definitely trust, experimentation, and generally the ability to sign things off. I think as soon as we've got too many chefs in the kitchen, it makes it very difficult to get things done. I know that a lot of merchants are very time poor. It's just the nature of being a business owner. But just if they can set aside some time to go through the things that we're sending over, provide feedback, approve for live, it just speeds up the entire process and they're going to see more value out of their money spent.
Cool. I think that's true. And the other thing, that's kind of dawned on me as well, we've spoken a lot about here as well, sort of smaller brands that start using in-house versus development. I mean, what's interesting about us now as an agency is that we have a lot of merchants who have in-house developers, in-house marketers. How do you get it right with those guys? Because obviously, look, I guess it's kind of a threatening environment, isn't it? Look, this agency's come in. If you're working on email marketing, we're also doing email marketing. How do you develop that relationship so there's kind of like an understanding between the two?
I think I want to say there's room in the sun for everyone, and we're not coming in as an agency to take someone's job. That's really not the case. But we want to give recommendations that, you know, the team can then go and implement, whether those are in marketing, whether those are in development. We are sort of assessing the website and how that's working, and your marketing and how that's working, in order to give you recommendations. If you've got a team to implement it, that's fantastic. It means there's less implementation for us, and we've got more time to spend on strategy for you.
Yeah, I think that's the projects I think we've done really well, like you say, is where there's that clear definition, isn't it? And it's like, right, if we are working with client Klaviyo, for example, you know, internally, you guys are going to handle this, we're going to handle that, and then the two of the things come together. So whether, like you say, we're doing strategy and the client's in implementation, or vice versa, you just got to define that from the start, I think, haven't you?
Absolutely. And I think what really helps is having those strategy calls each month with the client. So it's just, you know, making sure that both their team and our team are all on the same page. And I think those work really, really well to ensure that we're working together instead of against each other.
So I suppose when it comes to thinking about working with an agency, once you've been doing in-house for a while, are there maybe kind of 2 or 3 triggers or 2 or 3 things that you can kind of pinpoint and say, look, if you're experiencing these things, it's probably time to consider, you know, approaching an agency? I mean, for me, I'll kind of throw into the pot first. I think my ultimate point is that if you are in a position whereby you are trying to fulfill orders, do marketing, and also as well do your books, and doing all of those very averagely, you need to start looking at getting some help, because average in any of those is going to lead to it falling down.
Absolutely. And I would say if you're working more than 10 hours a day, or you're working sort of, I don't think any merchant or any sort of business owner is going to work less than 10 hours a day, but if you're working, you know, 10 hours a day or working weekends, I think it's definitely time to start looking at outsourcing.
And I think, you know, the other thing for me is, like, a lot of people often say to look, how much should you spend with an agency, for example? And there's been some studies done, you know, and I know that we kind of use the principle as well, as that if you want to stay where you are as a Shopify merchant, you need to spend about 5% of your revenue from your business in terms of development, design, and marketing. If you want to grow it, you need to go up to about 8%. So I think that, again, is a good marker, isn't it? And it's like, for some brands, that might not go very far with an agency, but at least you then know which kind of agencies that you can approach based on that kind of 5 to 8% marker, I think.
Yeah, and I think if your business is starting to become stagnant, if you've had like a massive surge in business, I don't want to say it's sort of COVID related, because that's sort of an external factor, but if you've had a massive growth in your business and it's starting to stagnate, then I think you probably need some help with your development.
Awesome. Well, look, Cal, thank you very much for chatting to me. Nice to have you on the first one of these.
I've been trading this for 18 months, but it was relatively painless, so.
Awesome. And guys, thank you very much for tuning in today and having a look at our blend vlog. If you have liked what we've talked about, do give us a like or a share, and do please use the comments feature below to discuss what we've been talking about. Kelly and I will come back on those comments as well and give some more feedback too. Cheers.